Alright, well last time we were talking about our major and perfect intervals. This time we're going to talk a little bit about minor intervals. So just as a quick refresher, our perfect intervals are our fourths and our fifths. And if we're thinking about it from our major scale, if we start on a C, we think C is 1, D is a second, E is a third, then F is a fourth. So that's a perfect fourth right there. Perfect fifths, of course, would be from C to G. We're counting from the first note of the scale to the fourth, first note of the scale to the fifth note. Okay? When we think about our minor intervals, we're thinking about altered tones. And we talked about sharps and flats. A sharp raises a note a half step, a flat lowers a pitch a half step. So if we have a C, and our third would normally be an E, this is a major third. First note of the scale to the third note of the scale. C to E. Well, if we wanted to make this a minor third, we add a flat on it. And when we do that, it makes it a minor third. So it's no longer major, it's minor because there's a smaller gap, a smaller number of half steps in between these notes. When we had C before, or let's put it here, that would sound a little weird if I played it, but if we have C to E, we have C to C sharp, that's a half step, C sharp to D, that's a half step, D to D sharp, that's a half step, D sharp to E, it's a half step. So we have all of these half steps in between there. When we have our minor intervals, we take a half step out. So we remove one, we make it smaller, the space in between notes. So it ends up sounding a lot smaller. Let's make this so that we can hear the differences between the intervals. So we make it a minor interval, a minor third. Notice, by the way, how there's not a flat on this last one. When we have an accidental, the little symbol that makes a flat or a sharp in a measure, it carries all the way to the end of the measure. So this is still an E flat because we had a flat already in the measure for that line. Which is same would be true with spaces, and same would be true with sharps. So let's listen to this. Major intervals first. Can you hear the difference between the major and the minor intervals? The minor intervals sound a little sadder, a little darker. Let's listen to what they sound like stacked on top of each other. Actually, let's do this in whole notes because this will make it make more sense. So we have a major interval, still that third, and now let's have our minor third stacked on top. So major third first. Sounds happy, home, nice. Listen to it again. Major third's going to sound, oh, okay, normal. Minor third's going to sound, oh, sad. Can you hear the difference? Now this is true with minor intervals, and major intervals are true with intervals that aren't perfect. So a perfect unison, a perfect fourth, or a perfect fifth have something completely different. But if we have a sixth, for instance, C to A, C to A is definitely one of those consonant intervals. In fact, if you watch a lot of TV, this will sound a little familiar. Okay, let me make those half quarter notes too. It's the MBC thing. But if we take it and we turn our sixth into a minor interval by making it smaller, once again we're decreasing the space in between notes by a half step. It sounds different. It no longer sounds the same happy open sound. See, now something's wrong, it's darker. So the space in between notes makes a difference in the sound. And this ties into a different kind of scale, a minor scale, which we haven't talked about. We will at some point, probably. But the important thing to understand is that intervals can be adjusted based on how you put sharps and flats. So it gives you a lot of options. When we were thinking about it before, we only had our 8 options that were found in the major scale. A unison, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and an octave. An octave is the name that we give when we go from one letter to the same letter in a different position. So that what I just put up there is an E and an E. That's an octave. It's the space before the letters start repeating themselves. And of course, intervals can also go higher than that. You can have, you know, a ninth or a tenth or 11, or you can just continue to go. It's the space in between the two notes. So that's kind of just rounds out the basic concept of intervals. Next one we're going to go over is going to have just a little bit of a reminder of how rhythms work, introduce the dot, and then that gives you enough of a basis to kind of have an idea how to read music. Which means that, fortunately, we'll be able to start on some more deeper theory concepts and how basic stuff works when you put all these individual elements together. I'm getting pretty excited about that, actually.